Hi, everyone. This week, what I'd love to dive in and discuss a little bit is bias. When I start every presentation on unconscious bias, I ask the audience by show of hands, how many of you think that you're biased? And some people's hands will shoot right up, and then you've got some people that maybe they are, and then you've got people that don't raise their hands at all. And then I say to them, that was kind of a trick question, because in reality, if you have a brain, you're biased. And then I share with them that the function of our brain is to keep us safe. And as a result of that primary function of the brain receives a lot of information that it's processing. So in order to be able to process information quickly, it has created a mechanism by which it creates associations. So really, our brain, based on things that we've been exposed to, creates these associations to tell us, okay, this is, you're safe here, you're not safe here. And sometimes it's correct with those associations, and sometimes it's incorrect. And so this is where our biases come from. And the interesting thing about bias is that we take it personally. We make it a reflection of our values or who we are as a person, which is why we have difficulty being able to raise our hand and say, absolutely, I'm biased. And that's why I always like to start with that place, that we're all biased. And I also like to share with individuals that this bias is informed by the perspectives that of our upbringing, of our conditioning. And so from there, our role really is to become more aware of what lies beneath the waterline. What do I mean by that? I often share a picture of an iceberg where you can see the top of the iceberg, but most of the iceberg is hidden below the waterline. And I share with participants that below the waterline are all the things that we're not aware of ourselves. And by definition, that's the unconscious piece that we don't even see it within ourselves. And our role really is to start uncovering that, so that we're almost like exposing more of that iceberg, right? And from that perspective, raising that water line so that more becomes visible to us. So that's really where our work lies, because it's not in the fact that we don't have that below the waterline. We all do. And one example that I often share when I'm training, for me, relates to gender roles. And I give the example that I grew up in a household where my parents had very, very traditional gender roles. And in fact, at one point, my mother wasn't even allowed to work because the woman's place was in the home. But because she was confined to these traditional gender roles and didn't really believe in them, what she encouraged me to do is to be independent, to have a career, to study, all of these things. And so what's fascinating to me about that is that from one perspective, because of the encouragement and the opportunities, I was able to and believe in, from a conscious perspective, non-traditional gender roles. But because what I saw modeled were very traditional gender roles, there are times when I've even surprised myself in some of the comments that I've made or reactions that I've had to certain situations where I'm reverting back to that modeling, where I'm expecting these traditional gender roles, even though consciously that's not what I believe in. And it's a real aha moment. I'm almost like shocking myself by my comments. And so that's where the invitation for all of us is. Where might we have been influenced or conditioned to, again, hold these biases that we're not even aware of? And sometimes, again, they sneak up on us. And by definition, again, that these are our blind spots. So how do we become aware, right? That's the $1,000,000 question. How do we become aware of these if by definition they're unconscious? So what I always encourage individuals to do is, the more that we can expose ourselves to individuals that have different ways of seeing the world, different perspectives, different ideas. You don't have to agree with them. And in fact, I would highly encourage you to put yourself in situations with individuals that see the world in a way that you don't, and you don't necessarily agree with, because it opens you up to being able to just sit with differences and different perspectives. And sometimes that's when we start seeing our own biases come into the conversation or the situation, depending on what it is. So my invitation to all of you as you're listening to this is, one, to raise your self-awareness. How can you become aware of all those things that are below the waterline for you? And how can you expose yourself to different perspective, different individuals that you wouldn't necessarily on a daily basis have exposure to. And this is how we can create more awareness of different perspectives.